Okay. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to, I think of what month it is, September's Council. Good to see everyone. I know that we have some apologies.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So we have apologies from Councillor Farmer, who has another appointment this evening, Councillor Lineker, who is unwell, Councillor Liver, who is at a District Council planning meeting, along with Councillor Paul, and Councillor Turnbull is on holiday.
Okay, is everyone happy to accept those apologies? Okay, excellent. Does anyone have any declarations of interest? No? Okay. Agenda item 12, Mayor's report on urgent items. I'll just give you a little update on the charitable events this year. On Friday just gone, we had our second charitable event, which was a quiz at the Harpenden Trust. I should say thank you to the Harpenden Trust for organising it, and they let us use their hall free of charge and sell out very quickly, 60 places. The Mayor's table did not do that well, it has to be said, and we came last. Deputy Mayor's table, being polite, second to last. I think Councillor de Courts, you were struggling the other end of the league.
Now it's second year, we're still a few debates about the final couple of question answers. Trying to get over the woolly mammoth specific, trying to work out what other sort of mammoths exist other than woolly mammoths, but I'm getting over it gradually.
It's got researchers working on it. And then early November, we have a wine tasting, again being run by the Harpenden Trust at the Trust Hall. It's relatively compact hall, 6 people, so do look out for tickets. And then in January, Burns Night Supper. So that's my mayoral events, or charitable events anyway. And in terms of urgent items, not like so desperately urgent, but the town clerk is going to just mention one thing.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is an urgent item in the sense of our governance procedures. And on this evening's agenda, you would have noticed that there is an item regarding the first look of the 22-23 budget. At the meeting on the 22nd of September, the Corporate Policy and Finance Committee resolved to request some further information and scoping work to be carried out on that first look budget, which currently forecasts a requirement of a 9.2% precept increase. CPF wished to understand what the implications of a lower increase of 7% would be. In addition, at that meeting, CPF recommended to Council that it defers its first look at the budget this evening to November to allow that committee to consider the further scoping work. So as a result of this, I'm recommending, Mr. Mayor, to Council that Council resolves under urgent items to defer the business that is set out in 8.2 to the November Council meeting. And I would ask Mr. Mayor if you support that to take that to a vote.
Okay, is everyone, I support it. Is everyone happy to wait until November? Okay, good. Okay, item 13, public questions in accordance with Standing Order 22. We have none, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, and agenda item 14, then questions which have been previously submitted by members of the council.
Yeah, none received, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Agenda item 15, the minutes of annual council held on the 10th of May. So sorry, I'm reading the minutes. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, you're afraid.
Yeah, sorry, okay, so, yeah, okay. Okay, so agenda item 16 then. Minutes, it's all right? Okay, sorry. Okay. Minutes to confirm the minutes of the council held on the 28th of June, circulated herewith. Is everyone happy with the minutes? Okay. Okay. So minutes of committees and working parties reporting to the council. So 7.1 Community Services Committee to receive the minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to present the minutes of the Community Services Committee on the 23rd of June 2021. There are no recommendations to council.
Okay. And likewise 7.2 then Corporate Policy and Finance Committee, which Carl circulated, I think, yesterday.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to present the minutes of the meeting of the Corporate Policy and Finance Committee on the 22nd of September. There are two recommendations to Council covered by points 8.4 and 8.5, and therefore I'll make from the agenda.
Thank you very much. 7.3, Councillor Cowley, the Planning Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to present the minutes of the Planning Committee meetings held on the 29th of June, the 20th of July, and the 10th of August, and the 31st of August. I don't believe there are any recommendations to Council.
Okay, thank you. At 7.4, Rockhampton Park Flood Management Task and Finish Group.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to present the minutes of the Rockhampton Park Flood Management Task and Finish Group. We should at the back of for future purposes. Held on 2nd of July.
Right, just make a really small point about that. Because I know declarations of interest are important, so it's just for the record. It's down there as I declared interest at Council of Hertfordshire County Council, and I think it did, but I think I also said District Council. I don't know if you have a problem with that. Just want to record it for the record.
Yeah, sure. So Mr. Mayor, we'll correct that. That is correct. So apologies for that, Councillor. That will get amended and approved or recommended for approval at the Task and Finish Group next week, and then consider the minutes and then come back to Council.
Okay, very good. Okay, that's the end of our committees then. Okay, so I need to sign the minutes at the time. Everyone, yeah. Is everyone happy to accept the minutes of Council? Do we need to vote on them? Yeah. Okay, fine. All right, okay. Page 11. So this is the first of the officers' reports. So this report presents to Council the forward planner and resolution tracker recommendation, as you can see set out in 2.1.
No, Mr. Mayor, nothing to add. Just very happy to take any questions on this.
Any questions on the forward planner resolution tracker? No? Okay. Yeah.
There was something about Town Clerk was going to give an update on the high street social distancing. Do you have anything to add? Oh, sorry to be on the spot.
On the, an update on the.
Well, it said on the resolution tracker, high street social distancing and so forth.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. So in terms of the high street measures, there was a meeting last week of a number of key stakeholders that was in the form of the County Council calling a project board. And at that meeting, there was discussions around the future of the high street social distancing measures. There were some decisions taken at that meeting. However, in light of those decisions and what was agreed at the meeting, perhaps I can refer to this under exempt business, considering we've got exempt business later in the meeting.
We're happy with that. Okay. Councillor Drake.
Councillor Hill was very eloquently put the point I was going to raise.
Okay, Councillor Maynard, then Councillor DeCourt. Okay.
I was just voting.
Oh, sorry. Okay, fine. Yeah. No one else? No comments, sir? Okay, very good. So we're happy. Yeah, everyone's happy with the two recommendations. Okay, everyone's happy with the two recommendations, yeah? Okay. Okay. Business plan updates.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this paper sets out two key updates from the business plan and the capital improvement plan, capital improvement programme, I should say, that the council has approved previously. There is one item within this that I'd just like to give a very quick update on, and to say that further information, Mr. Mayor, is going to be circulated in a bulletin later this week, and that relates to both the business plan and the CIP, and that's related to festive lights. So as of this afternoon, we've been made aware that there are significant delays with the new products that the Town Council has procured. There's a number of reasons that we've been given for this that we are investigating. Later in the week, we'll have a better idea as to what that means in terms of impact on the new display. At the very least, we understand what it will mean is there'll be a bit of a hybrid. So we've clearly still got all the products from last year. At the moment, it's looking like we'll be able to introduce some of the new products where they fit with the old products, but there could be a delay to some of the other ones that mean they arrive later than the Christmas light switch on, or indeed later than the actual festive light period themselves. We have been given some details that we will share in the information bulletin once we've sort of fleshed them out a little bit, but we only found out about it a couple of hours ago as officers. So just wanted to give you a heads up and watch this space later.
But I mean, if we still have all the previous years, generally people are quite happy with the last few years. So worst case scenario, would it be as good as the last couple of years?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, so it should be as good as the last couple of years. There are some of the products from the previous years that are coming towards the end of their life, which we would anticipate some of the new products coming to replace them. But I just wanted to flag it now. I don't have all the details, but I just wanted to make you aware at this point because we've been made aware. And as we find out more later in the week, we have to give an exact picture as to what's looking in, what's looking out. So I understand there's two key delays. One is that the products have been held for 3 weeks at Dover. That's one thing that we've been told today. And also there is a delay in terms of supply internationally of some of the other products. And I understand there's also an international shortage of gold plated festive lights. That's what we've been told today. So as you can imagine, we're trying to find out more.
Sounds pretty serious. Sounds pretty serious.
Christmas is cancelled.
Bit hard to do.
Okay, but that's fine. We've got obviously it's contingency good that we've got the previous years. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions on the business plan updates? Yes, come.
Yes, I have the question on the appendix point 1. That's the screen. The Investigate House and Supermarket Plan with the funds available. No tenders submitted has indicated that more money is required. Can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, so this is an issue that we're experiencing across a lot of our management plans. Essentially, the funding that we have set out available to deliver a series of improvements is no longer enough to deliver those improvements. So this particular example, this was a tender to deliver a number of management plan initiatives within spring. We put that out to tender to a number of companies and more widely, we received no responses formally. And anecdotally, we've been told that the money that we had available for that requires at least double. So we're currently revisiting that tender process to see how we can deliver at least some of the priorities.
Yeah, Councillor Maynard.
Is that the general interest in material costs that's happening with the construction industry?
So I think, Mr. Mayor, the materials is one element of it, big element of it. I think labour is another element of it. But also, again, only anecdotally, what we've been told is actually there is quite a bit of work around at the moment, and so prices have gone up as a result of demand for people's services.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so recommendations, council, that we're asked to note the high-level updates against the business plan set out in Appendix A, the capital improvement programme set out in Appendix B. We happy to do so? Okay. Move on to page 35. The financial regulations amendments. Sound like you need to.
No, Mr. Mayor, there's nothing to say on this other than very happy to take any questions. And this is one of the recommendations that Councillor Drake referred to in his presentation of the minutes from CPF last week.
Okay.
It's page 49. Refer to the corporate management thing. Did that be a defined term? What does it mean?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we can certainly clarify that very early on as to what that is.
Councillor Butterworth. Do a great team.
You just have to do this on Zoom. On page 45, the red line change on 5.2. Is that correct? I'm not sure that the full stop, the third line of forming is actually right. It doesn't seem to be correct here. So,
You mean grammatically correct, or what it's trying to say?
well, I don't think it looks like the second sentence beginning with forming is actually a sentence. It doesn't read right correctly. So perhaps the full stop should have been a comma. I mean, that may sound a bit pedantic, but this is something we're altering, so we're going to alter it correctly if we haven't.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, we can make the correct changes to that.
So is that the change?
I think it is, yeah.
Okay, any other comments, questions?
Okay. If I may, one on page 49, there is a definition of the CMT for 2020. I know perhaps Councillor's previous question was who's comprised in the team. I'm sure it's quite to deal with that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, so the corporate management team consists of the town clerk, the finance manager, community services manager, internal operations manager, and the projects manager. And that definition is set out into the health and safety policy. It's the so the CMT is at the heart of council's health and safety work.
Okay, so then is everyone happy to accept the recommendation 2.1? Council asked to approve the following recommendation of the Corporate Policy and Finance Committee. Let's move on to agenda item 8.5, page 61, which is the earmarked reserves policy review. Again, a similar recommendation. Assuming the town clerk doesn't want to say anything. Does anyone have any questions, any comments? Okay, so the council is asked to approve the following recommendation for finance, the earmarked reserve policy and the earmarked reserve statement as recommended by Corporate Policy and Finance Committee. Yeah. Moving on to page 71, which is remote attendance at council meetings. To consider adding some flexibility, remote attendance at council meetings. Town clerk, do you want to?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, there's not a great deal to say that isn't already in this, but the idea of this is to try and create some flexibility for councillors, given that we have now got the audiovisual equipment that allows that to happen, which is essentially making some local rules whereby in certain circumstances councillors that are appointed to committees could attend virtually in certain circumstances should they need to. There are some rules around this in that we obviously clearly can't break any legislation. So there are certain things that those councillors, if they were joining, would not be able to do. But this aims to give some flexibility, particularly in advance of legislation that we do believe is going to come at some point in the not too distant future, which could actually could give councillors the right to join meetings remotely, which is part of the reason why the council has got ahead of the game and purchased new AV equipment.
Yeah, Councillor Boswell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think this is an initiative very much to be welcomed. Having started again meeting in person, I think there's great merit in that. I don't think it should just be, oh, I don't feel like it. There should be a good reason, and this is what we've set out, and I very much endorse that. Clearly, legislation isn't in place to facilitate this in a formal way, in a full context. And certainly at St Albans, they've been taking a very strict view that councillors cannot participate in a committee meeting unless present. Personally, I think that's been too strict, and I would welcome this sort of flexibility. Can I ask Town Clerk through the Mayor whether through government decision or anyone else, anyone has approved this approach prior to legislation coming in? Because it'd be very interesting if they have. I think they should. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, so certainly within our sector, our part of local government, there are a number of councils that are operating in this way. Indeed, there are a number that actually have operated hybrid meetings right from the start of the pandemic. Many have just sort of run the risk of continuing with face-to-face, even in light of legislation. So there are lots of places that are operating in this way, in this level of flexibility. I understand there are some within the local authority sort of part of local government as well, but certainly not as many. This is something I see more in our part of the sector.
Councillor Scriven?
Just really a query as to whether this only applies to councillors and whether officers would be encouraged to be here in person where possible. Again, I think having them in person, there are benefits to that.
Yeah, certainly, Mr. Mayor. So for every committee or every part of the government structure, the lead officer will always, will be here unless there is some exceptional circumstance. So this applies to councillors only. The benefit of having the AV equipment is that what you will see in future, quite possibly, is other officers other than the lead officer joining to present certain items where they might be the lead, which is something that historically we haven't done, partly because it means them coming out in the evenings and various implications of that. So you will always have a lead officer whose role will be to be at the meeting. So council will be myself or a deputy. But so this is mainly for councillors, but because we've got the equipment, you'll see officers joining more often than usual.
Okay. Councillor Maynard and Caroline Green.
Following scenes, I think this is a good idea. It takes us forward. I think Councillor Scriven's comment about officers is a good one. I was at a meeting recently at the district council where much older councillors are sitting around the table and being joined by officers on a screen. And I don't think there was a lead officer present at that. It was just the democratic services. I think that we do have to be sensitive to that. But I think I welcome if officers are just making a presentation of one item, why would they have to be here for an entire meeting? It doesn't make any sense. I think that's a good idea. And it's also good that councillors can join in, even though you have to be in the room to vote. I think then being able to join in, because quite often people just can't make it for whatever reason. But it gives them an opportunity to perhaps make a point that wouldn't have been made if they could come into the meeting, which kind of is valuable for everyone. So I think that's a good idea. I'd like to endorse this recommendation.
Councillor Cowley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My thanks again to remember that standing up for every speaker. The town clerk, it may be a legislation question more than a process question, but is there any reason why we couldn't apply this to members of the public who wish to contribute? I'm thinking specifically a planning committee, but council committees where members of the public can ask questions.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. So essentially, we don't require this policy or this new approach to do that. Again, the new equipment that we've got now smoothly enables us to have greater public participation in meetings as well. And whilst we are clearly recording this meeting and it will be broadcast in the same way that we used to face, once we've gone through this cycle of September meetings where we're very much kind of testing the technology, the plan is from the November cycle is to be more actively promoting public engagement in the meetings, both in terms of face-to-face, should they wish to, but also joining remotely just to listen in or to ask a particular question where appropriate. So the technology now enables us to do that. So we don't need a policy that helps that.
That's good. Councillor Quiggin.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate, I think it's great. I think it's moving forward. I'll definitely use it. I actually have found doing the meetings over Zoom, whatever it's called, really useful. I think the structure of these meetings are so formal, we all have a turn to speak. I thought it actually worked really well. So really applaud this. Thank you very much. And I'll definitely use it. Good.
Councillor
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on Councillor Cowley's point about public participation, one thing I noticed on since joining the planning committee, there's been a few applications where there's been like a whole streak of being interested in one application, and I understand the rules are that only one person can sort of speak for and against something. but you know, there'd be a few people who just want to sort of observe it live. So is there a way that, you know, even if, you know, more people can sort of watch it, can like join, because we said we couldn't let people in to join the Zoom meeting if they weren't speaking, because we were concerned having too many people in. But if we have, now we're back to physically, because it's not really great to say to someone, oh, you know, you can watch it a few days on YouTube. I think we kind of want more people to be able to watch it live, even if they're not speaking.
Okay. I mean, I think it's a good idea. The only thing I suppose I would say is that, from my point of view, if someone is like going on holiday for a week, or you know, a couple of weeks, from my point of view, as you know, as long as you've got the Recora, you don't feel as though you need to. Appreciate if you know you're cruising around the Adriatic, you know, you don't need to interrupt your drinks reception. But I think it's a good thing. Yeah. Okay, so I'm guessing then everyone's happy to go with the recommendation. Council is asked to consider the idea of allowing remote attendance at meetings and approve the principles of paragraphs 3.2 and 3.3. Okay. Moving on to page 73 then, which is the community governance review.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you'll all be familiar that we recently had a local government boundary commission review of the St Albans district boundaries, which concluded in a number of changes across the district, but two in particular that would impact on our area. Off the back of local government boundary commission reviews, there is a community governance review that's being taken forward by the district council. Now, the more national review can't change town and parish boundaries, so you need to have a community governance review in order to make any changes that may be necessary as a result of the wider boundary commission review. So that governance review kicks off next month, and there'll be a rough 12-month period of consultation and considerations of representations to the district council, and with a view to any changes that come about from this being in place for April 23. So the paper in front of you this evening is really just to make sure that council is aware of this situation, but also start to consider any representations that may wish to be made across the whole of the governance review, but in particular to two areas that as officers we flagged may well be relevant. First is Harpen and South, which relates to 86 households who from next year will be in the Harpen and South District Ward, but will remain in the Wheathampstead Parish Council boundary. So there'll be a strange anomaly, in my view, where they'll be represented by a Harpen District Council, but pay precepts into a parish council, and that's a bit of an anomaly. So the town council may wish to consider representation on that particular issue to potentially bring those households into this area. And the second relates to Harpen.
Whether you just say which roads, you know, just
sure.
Isn't it opposite Alderwood, yeah.
Yeah, essentially, yes, exactly. So it's Crofwell, Long Buffaloes, and Poynings Close, which are the relevant ones in that particular area. The second area that the council may wish to make representation on is around Harpen North and Harpen Rural. There were some changes to the district ward boundaries in relation to that, in relation to Redbourne, I understand. And the town council may wish to consider whether it puts forward representations on that. When putting forward representations, you've got the presentation pack in the appendix here, which is provided by the district council. There are a number of kind of key principles that representations or any changes need to follow. And two of them broadly reflect where the area in question associates itself to. And secondly, whether the area in question already has an effective administrative unit. So those are two of the key considerations that if the town council wish to make representation in the future, we would need to address our thoughts on. So just wanted to put this on the agenda to start an initial conversation with this, if there is any comments or take any questions. And
anyone? Councillor Bosworth?
Thank you. Yes, once we learned about the change of boundaries for the district, this became obvious, and it's a no-brainer. Of course, we should do this. Being sensitive to the fact that Harpen Rural has its own parish council, and a parish clerk, And probably it would be diplomatic even outside of formal procedures to give a dialogue with them, so that they don't feel they're simply being taken over, though they are simply being taken over, as it were. And it may well be they say thank goodness for that. We'd like to quite confident that soon we're bringing the conversation that's better.
Councillor de Court.
Sorry, just a bit of clarification. I didn't think we were at that point where we're saying they're going to be taken over, and then we need to consult them. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, we're not at that point yet. But that could be a representation the town council makes. Of course, the rural parish council may make a representation of themselves that might conflict or be in line with the town council. But I think Councillor Butterworth's point is useful in terms of some early engagement and dialogue, just to see potentially where they're at. I can feed that back to council. But yeah, certainly no decision to be requested, isn't it?
Sorry. I can just ask on that point, sort of who is the final decision maker? If, for example, and it is only an example, the Halfenden, rural wanted to stay a parish council and they're happy, can they just decide to do that?
So, Mr. Mayor, so it works in the same way as the boundary review. So the deciding body, which is the district council, asks for representations. They will consider those representations and come up with a conclusion. There doesn't need to be conformity to one way forward. It'd be up to the district council to decide that, depending on what representations were made.
Councillor de Court.
I was just going to say, related, I totally agree with having the conversation with the parish council. But my position would be from this stage, if they say that they are happy to remain as a unit body with the parish clerk, I would personally feel uncomfortable about us wishing to then put a representation that disagree with that.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Fine. So 2.1 then, council is asked to note the details of the CGR set out in Appendix A and consider the areas that it may wish to make representation on in the future, and agree to add an item to the council forward plan at an appropriate time to formalise the town council's representations on the CGR. Everyone happy with that? Let's move on to page 85. CCTV allocation of capital reserves, to request the allocation of capital reserves to fund current planned CCTV infrastructure and future improvements.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we are currently very active in trying to install CCTV cameras into Rockhampstead Park to address some real current issues that we have, and also to act as a deterrent for some hopefully some future issues that I'm sure will come up. I have got just short couple of slides, Mr. Mayor, just to share with council, just because it visualises what we're actually looking to achieve within Rockhampstead Park. I appreciate the Rockhampstead Park subcommittee will have seen a version of these, albeit they will recognise the version they saw was more freehand drawing from me. So this is much improved.
Just wanted to get your post on the screen.
Yeah. So essentially, Mr. Mayor, we are looking at a two-phased approach to CCTV in Rockhampstead Park, and I will explain this wonderful diagram in front of you here. So the first phase, we're looking to install 2 cameras into the area around the multi-use games area and the tennis court and the play area. Very importantly, this is an area where we have significant issues at the moment. In particular, at the bottom of this image, if you imagine where the tree line is along Coach Lane, we have some serious antisocial behaviour issues going on every day, which I understand led to 2 fires most recently that the fire brigade were called out to. So essentially, we are we're looking to put a 24/7 surveillance camera in on the left-hand dot, yellow dot you can see, and a high-performing wildlife camera, solar powered, on the right-hand yellow dot. So the yellow dots represent cameras. The way in which the 24/7 surveillance camera works is that it sends its images via Wi-Fi, and it has to connect to a Wi-Fi hub where there is one currently situated on top of the leisure centre building. So the orange line on this picture here shows the line of transmission from the Wi-Fi signal through the trees onto the top of the leisure centre, and I'll come on onto the reference to trees in a second. The blue area that you see covered by that camera is broadly, these are 360 cameras, but broadly that'll be the area that this one will have its focus upon and give us good coverage. The reason why we're having a second camera is because if you imagine this area here, the right-hand side of that blue oval shape is covered off by trees. So actually the young area of the play area would not be covered by that camera. So we're looking to have the second camera at the top of that under 5 area, looking down to give us wider coverage. This in itself is very complex because the Wi-Fi signal needs to get across. We've got a bit of a solution to that with the trees, but the red lines on here marks the current electrical supply that runs underground in Roughampstead Park. Now, this electrical supply, I would say, is probably not of the highest standard. It's not particularly very far underground. And so we've been carrying out tests as to whether that can be changed in order to facilitate the CCTV camera that's got the 24/7 access. We're getting some quotes at the moment. We think actually the electrical work is actually going to come in at less than £1,000. Our electrical contractors have been working wonders in coming up with ways of changing this. And the camera itself is going to be about £5,000, the first camera, upfront costs. 24/7 cameras do not have any ongoing costs. It feeds into the district council setup, which is over at the Civic Centre in St Albans. So it has really good coverage.
You mean the pictures feed into it?
Pictures feed in, yeah. So that's where it's watched all the time there. So that's phase one, which links to the recommendations here around releasing some funds, or actually allocating some funds and then releasing. Phase two, we're really looking at 3 areas that are for consideration at the moment. We're not looking for approval on this. This will come back down the line. The first, so again, there's 3 yellow circles that represent cameras. The first one on the entranceway into the park itself. The second one, which is in the middle, if you imagine in the future when we have our wonderful 3G pitch, this camera will cover that area. So that will provide a real useful deterrent to any issues there. And the top camera will actually provide just a wider coverage in the top area of the park. In particular, towards the bottom of that image where the dell is situated, if we are to put in place some future flood mitigation measures in that area, it will be useful to have some coverage up there. So I just wanted to flag the first and second phase to give some context to this request. And then we do go back to my freehand squiggled on this one. So just to let you know, in order to get the Wi-Fi signal across, we have got a natural gap in the trees, which is handy. But it does need some remedial work in order to the trees in order to get us, in order to get the signal across. So just flagging that to you, just as context to this report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions from councillors? Councillor Scriven, Councillor Hill.
Just a query, Carl, really on your phase 2 as to whether it's worth scoping putting cameras at the Orchard Avenue car park and around that area, just to know if that had been considered.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I think it's a good suggestion, and we'll put that into the scope when we get to that stage, I think.
Councillor Hill.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on the phase 1 section on the mugger and tennis courts, am I right in thinking that we have to wait until we actually have control of those? Is it the leather contract which runs out next year? So I'm assuming that that's whenever that we would we have to wait for the play area one to then do the, because we'll have to wait until we have control of the mugger and the tennis court, I assume, the leather contract, and then do we have to wait for both at the same time?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. So when we first started scoping this and realised there were some electrical issues, we did think that we were going to have to wait until, or potential to wait until these facilities come back into our full control next year. But given the issues we've had antisocial behaviour, we've been working with the district council to do that now, basically. So if the money is allocated and released today, then I'm expecting by the end of October to at least have the left-hand camera operational. We've got everything lined up now. The final bit of the jigsaw is the release and the allocation of the funding to council to allow us to do that.
Okay. Get on with that. Councillor Cowley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, let me congratulate the town clerk as somebody who can't get a Wi-Fi signal 6 feet for getting one all the way across Rothamsted Park. Just on the ongoing, the district council's ongoing monitoring of the cameras. Am I right in thinking that that's because it's an existing thing that they do already? There's no charge to us over the long term for maintaining that. And is that an in-house thing they operate, or is it a contract they have? It's just thinking in terms of long term, whether we have to take on that cost eventually or not.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. So as it stands, the plan is for this just to go into their current setup. They do have a contract with a company that's been running that for a number of years now. They certainly used to operate in other towns across the county as well, because that company won other contracts. So we're not expecting any costs at the moment. The only cost that we might have ongoing is just repairs and general maintenance of things, but it will form part of the existing CCTV setup. It's worth noting that there is a camera that is back installed around the skate park. So pre-leisure development, there was a CCTV camera set up there. It went missing during the development. It's been found and it's back installed now. And that gives good coverage over by the leisure centre. I think in particular, thanks should go to Neil Kieran at the District Council. It's been incredibly helpful in scoping out these different options and getting this sorted for us.
Very good. Back to you. Yeah, Councillor Hill this time, and then Councillor Scriven.
A few very quick, just about the on the Rothamsted Park Committee, you were saying how there's an area just in those trees where sometimes teenagers will go in. Is your assessment of that the Mugger CCTV might add some sort of deterrent to that? And if not, is there anything else we could do?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. So we're very, very hopeful that will act as a big deterrent. So when we've been talking to colleagues in the police about this, I know lots of councillors have been as well. The thing that they keep telling us is, can we get some CCTV? So we hope that it will be a big deterrent. We know from some of our other open spaces that where we've deployed mobile cameras ourselves, there has been a decline in issues. So much so that at one point we kind of tested it by removing it for a day, and it quite quickly became apparent that the issues came back. So we quickly put it back up. So that's the kind of limit about testing with some of the wildlife ones. But we believe, and the police believe, this will be a really key deterrent in that particular area.
Councillor Scriven.
Just to ask the town clerk to clarify, I think it came up in conversation before, with the 2 CCTV cameras that you flagged in phase 1, they work on slightly different systems, where the Wi-Fi one is viewed 24/7 by a control room. The other is the wildlife camera actually records, and only if there would be an incident, you would go back and view the recording. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Mayor. So that second camera is useful retrospectively, but its main aim is as a deterrent at the time. So that's where we've deployed a very similar camera in another open space. We have seen a positive impact on that. Essentially, the signs that will be up in that area will be exactly the same. They won't determine differences in cameras. So as far as it's concerned, it is a 24/7 surveillance area.
Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 questions for the town clerk through you, Mr. Mayor. The first one is just a matter of detail. The Wi-Fi camera in the blue ellipse, it obviously is looking over to the higher age group area, but it isn't looking southwest up the line of trees, Kirk Lane trees, which seems odd because you'd normally expect a camera to be looking all around. In order to help with the problem of antisocial behaviour in the line of trees, would it be feasible, without any extra work, for that camera to take a broader sweep up the edge of that line of trees? I have one further question. That one first.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. So purely this is how I've depicted the area it covers. So it's a 360 camera. So whilst it will have a home position, which will probably be, to start with, well, to be agreed, I think, but probably on the trees to start with, given that we've got the immediate huge issues there. So it'll have a home position. But if you imagine a 360 radius around that camera, that's where it covers. So this is just my image, just to show the kind of the priority areas that it's going in for.
Yeah.
The wildlife camera, sort of green, it's a pity that it isn't the same grade of camera as the Wi-Fi camera, and everything's possible technically at cost. Has it been costed for what it would take to make that the same grade of camera? And there's the electrical that would be needed for that, because it's quite it's a gap in our armory if it isn't the same grade.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. So there's two issues with this. So one is a financial issue in that the electrical infrastructure work would need significant upgrading, and the workaround that we've got to enable one camera wouldn't work for a second permanent feed there. One of the reasons for that, so originally when we talked about a subcommittee, it was a cost factor. So we would have to re-dig all the trenches in this particular area here, which would be a huge cost. Having examined the areas, and this is another issue for the town council at a later date, we found that actually the floodlight infrastructure is incredibly poor and needs replacing. At the moment, the town council, it's not urgent for us to do that, but in order to, if we wish to have a second 24/7 Wi-Fi camera in that spot, we would essentially have to replace all of the floodlights within that area in order to do it. So that in itself is a huge cost. We haven't scoped exact costs, but we know from a similar project in the park elsewhere that was upwards of £40,000-50,000 for four lights that were in advanced state, and these ones are. The second issue is the Wi-Fi signal. There is just no route there to get to a Wi-Fi hub. The only way in which we would cover that is if we removed at least 3 of the Lime Avenue trees to get through. It is to the image I showed, it is just part of luck that there is a natural gap in the trees. Otherwise it would have been a big problem.
You can't go from one to the other like hop.
You no, so we're advised against that. It significantly damages the quality, and also it creates a lot of other technical problems that could wipe both cameras out the time. It's one of the first things we asked, but they go direct to.
I think Councillor Cowley, did you have?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I wanted to ask a point of clarification about the 360-degree camera. Is that a camera that spins, or is that a camera that looks 360 degrees? We should have asked it earlier, but.
So yeah, it rotates, Mr. Mayor. It has a home position that we would have to agree, and the home position change day by day, but it can see 360.
It's just one of the when we use all of the cameras where people on the ground can't actually see which way it's pointing because it's a bit fast.
Yes, yeah, it's
when she's intelligent itself.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Is the direction of the camera controlled by the control room, or does it have to be done on site? So if they see some activity, I presume they can change the position of the camera remotely.
That's correct. Yeah. So they will change the camera remotely on an ongoing basis, and if indeed they are following an issue, so the way in which it's worked before, it's quite often the cameras are used to track issues through different places, and the network of cameras are used to track people's movements where it's necessary from a police point of view. So yeah, it will be controlled. We won't have to do it.
Absolutely.
That's very quickly, yeah. I just came to mind. Have you ever heard about it's a risk of? I don't know how it happened, but if the CCTV cameras were like damaged in any way, I don't know how that happened. Have you heard of like that happening before? And if like, do we have like insurance in case somehow they get damaged?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. So our insurance will cover any new assets like this that we would have. I'm sure that these sorts of things must get damaged at times. Not sure how frequent. Hopefully, the fact that it's a camera and it's really high up and watching people, that hopefully people won't. That in itself is just a terror.
It's easy to capture.
Okay, let's move to the recommendation there. It sounds as though it's going to be a good agreement, but it's 2.1, 2.11, 2.12. Agree to allocate 50,000 from the capital reserves to fund CCTV improvements. Approve the release of up to 15,000 of that allocation to deliver phase 1 installation of the mass block. Happy? Okay. Okay, agenda item 9. So we're going to vote to move into exempt business now. In view of the confidential nature of the following items, which relate to business matters or other individuals and organisations, the public and accredited representatives of the press shall be excluded while they are discussed. This is in accordance with Public Bodies Act 1960, as amended by the Local Government Act 1972. People happy to move into exempt business?